before I got into the radio gig, and even while I was still interning here at the radio station, gosh, like 16, 17 years ago or so, where's the time gone? I worked at a restaurant and spent a good 4 years there doing everything from helping prep food in the back to unloading trucks at 3 o'clock in the morning, to washing dishes, to serving tables, to being a dining room assistant manager, to being a bartender. Really enjoyed it. I like the food service industry and made good money doing it, and understood that we were sub-wage workers because we would get cash tips throughout the night that would put us well and above over minimum wage if you were good at it. Well, there's a movement at the Illinois Statehouse to essentially change the structure of tipped workers, and this movement is from several labor unions coming together in what they call one fair wage. And they had an event at the Illinois Statehouse where they essentially laid out some of their demands. And here's just some of what that looked like earlier this week at the Statehouse as they pushed for increasing tipped wage workers to minimum wage workers, which eventually is going to be up to $15 an hour here in the state of Illinois.
All right. One fair wage. One fair wage. One fair wage. One fair wage. One fair wage.
They held a rally of sorts at the State House pushing for the issue of increasing tipped wage workers. And I talked with the Senate sponsor of the bill, and this is Democratic State Senator Christina Passiona-Zayas, and she talks about what they're looking to do at the Illinois Statehouse when it comes to increasing the amount that tipped wage workers receive. Here's some of what she had to say when I chatted with her about the bill.
That what we're trying to address is this gap, because when it comes down to it, to live on $7.80 an hour is just not doable. It's not sustainable, and frankly, it's exploitative. And so when we lift all tides and lift all boats, as they say, we're able to then have a thriving economy because it goes right back into the economy, and folks are able to take care of their most basic necessities and ideally have a decent quality of life.
So what about the idea, though, of the tipped wage workers and the impacts on businesses? Are they going to be able to provide those jobs when the time comes to provide those jobs?
They're supposed to. That doesn't always happen. And so I think that's what we're trying to have some guardrails around. I mean, I remember seeing on my check when I waited tables $2.70 hourly, and sometimes it really wouldn't even be that. So, I mean, that's really what we're trying to kind of close the gap on, because there are some bad actors in this situation that have completely exploited that.
So what about those bad actors, and how do you actually go after them? Because they're supposed to make up for the difference. If it's, you're making sub-minimum wage and you don't get the cash tips to make up to the difference of the minimum wage, then the employer is supposed to make that difference up. And employers do that. She says there's some bad actors that don't do that. And I asked her, I said, well, what about, instead of forcing this on everybody and possibly taking away the issue of, merit, why not have more from the Department of Labor to go after these bad actors that she points to as being a significant problem?
Well, then it would require every single restaurant. And at least, I am doing some work currently with the Department of Labor on other issues. And frankly, in terms of capacity for them to enforce and monitor, it's limited. And when you think that we have hundreds of thousands of restaurants in the state of Illinois, the fact that folks were carved out in the, minimum wage increase is a problem. It really just says you don't matter. We're not concerned about you. You're fending for yourselves. And this is really about bringing that equity back into the center and ensuring that folks are made whole.
So again, that is the state senator looking to increase the minimum wage for tipped workers. So the movement is, tips on top. So they want to get the minimum wage, which eventually is going to be $15 an hour, and to have you tip on top of that. Listen, as somebody who served the issue of tips, I saw the good side of it, the bad side of it. I saw where some tables didn't tip properly, even though you gave them great service. But then you'd come come in and the next table would tip you, 50%. Or we always saw those stories too of somebody getting $100 tip on a couple of drinks. And so I know at least in my world, I've been tipping well and beyond 20+% when it comes to getting great service at a wonderful restaurant. So interesting to see this movement. Just how far it's going to go will be fascinating as well. I talked with State Representative Mike Coffey, who's in the restaurant business, and he shared with me some of his reaction to this idea of increasing tipped wage workers' wages beyond the sub-tip wage to full minimum wage, regardless of cash tips.
Well, it would have a negative impact, and I'll tell you the ones that the tipped employees would suffer from that because all of my tipped employees make a considerable amount of money. The computer systems are intact, that the tips are reported automatically, so that the state and the federal government are getting their fair share of their taxes and all that. So they've got a system that works. They need to leave it alone. They got to quit going after and trying to find out new ways to tax people and new regulations to hamper business. They've just got to stop. It's a system that's worked. It's worked for a long time. Let's leave it alone.
And he talks about how indeed they do have that system in place.
So if you bring a tipped employee in that is training, let's say, you have to pay them the minimum wage to make up for that. Yeah. So the system works. There's not a problem with it. Leave it alone.
What about service? Is it going to be hurt by increasing the wage?
I think that's what differentiates the United States of America from a lot of these other countries. We reward hard work. So it gives the customer the ability to reward somebody for great service and, take away if the service is not great. And I think that's the best system. Capitalism is the best system, and rewarding people for hard work through tips is what I'm for.
And we'll see what happens with that legislation. It'll start in the House, I'm told, and then go over to the Senate. Will there be any modifications? Will they instead use this as a way to increase funding for the Department of Labor to go after bad restaurant actors who aren't paying their servers up to that minimum wage if they don't make those cash tips? So we'll obviously be talking about this in the future and getting your reaction to the idea of should you tip at all? And I think that's always a fascinating conversation to have.